Alright, so, speaking of scumbags. Okay. I mean, you think about the mentality of these guys. Okay, here's Larry Summers, who was inheriting, he came along with Obama when Obama came into office. Okay, he says, the central irony of the financial crisis is that while it is caused by too much confidence, too much borrowing and lending, and too much spending, it can only be resolved with more confidence, more borrowing and lending, and more spending. That's who's running the show. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, you have terminal cancer. So we're going to inject you with some cancer. Oh, that's a great idea. Thanks. This makes, obviously, it's the word of a sociopath or a psychopath. Here's Paul Krugman, who everyone loves to quote. He was asked, about the crisis a few years ago, and he said, well, when Alan Greenspan was still Fed chairman, he said Alan Greenspan used to create a housing bubble to replace the NASDAQ bubble. All right, that's a good sound policy. So now, due to the magic of prestidigitation and whatnot, I can teach you all how to be Fed chairman. European Central Bank, Bank of England, Federal Reserve Bank, Bank of Japan. Oh, there's a beautiful one there. That's pretty much all they did, is blow bubbles. And by design. There you go. I said the magic word, blow bubbles. That's all it took. And by design. That's the problem here, is that starting in 2008, the bubble methodology stopped working. Basically, the bubble modus operandi stopped to inflate the economy because by that time, with over 600 or 700 trillion in derivatives contracts floating around the world, that's 10 times the global GDP, and without another species or alien civilization showing up to bail out planet Earth, it became a mathematical impossibility to pay off that debt. No matter, and of course, there is no collateral behind that debt. So when the Fed prints more of this garbage, it's actually more debt, and they're just adding debt onto debt. Whereas Larry Summers said, in his brilliant quote, you just need more of the same over and over again. And this debt is compounding, and it's just causing this incredible weight. It's pushing everything down, and there is no acceptance of the fact of what needs to be done here. Is that some of these banks, these so-called too big to fail banks, need to fail. We need to get rid of these. There needs to be less of these predatory monopolist banks that are gobbling up all their competitors. When the crisis started, there was too big to fail banks. Now they're even bigger. Lehman's gone, Bear's gone. There's more concentration, and there's more of a problem. They've got more power. So again, with Jamie Dimon, the man of the hour. He was quoted as something clipped out of here. I've totally destroyed my notes. Very something. He goes just a few weeks ago. This is what his attitude was about this crisis. And once again, sorry for my hippie glasses. Okay, Dimon, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of J.P. Morgan Chase, used the annual letter to shareholders to rail against contrived and confusing financial rules that he said might stymie, then I put in these words: securitization, re-securitization, derivatives trading, naked credit default swaps, and other weapons of mass final destruction. U.S. international officials made the recovery worse than it otherwise would have been, Dimon wrote in a letter released today. They almost botched the U.S. debt ceiling vote. Yeah, we needed another trillion on that, didn't we? 14 trillion wasn't enough. 100% of GDP is not high enough. We need 200% of GDP. Make it $30 trillion in debt ceiling. they're constraining the bank leverage at precisely the wrong time. When, for a heroin addict, is the right time to withdraw from heroin? When is the right time to pull the booze away from the alcoholic? When is the right time for Jamie to step away from the gambling casino? It's always the right time for us. It's never the right time for him. Diamond defended a banking industry that has been besieged by new rules and public contempt. Thank you very much. I think we're leading the way on that. After lax mortgage lending contributed to the worst economic slump since the Great Depression. He championed the use of derivatives and the right of banks to lobby lawmakers and hailed the U.S. economy and corporations as engines of growth. Here's an interesting sentence. They right of banks to lobby lawmakers. That phrase alone is kryptonite because lobbyists and folks in Washington, by law, can trade on inside information. Folks in Washington, when they 2 or 3 years later, they got another 50, 60, or 70, or $100 million in the bank account. It's not illegal for lobbyists to attend, or for Wall Street to attend meetings in Capitol Hill talking about various new regulations that would affect the pharmaceutical industry, for example. They go and trade on inside information. And it's not illegal for them, it's not illegal for the politicians. So they are trafficking in inside information. The Wall Street, Washington, corridor of weasels is alive and well, and of course they're just banking it, and they're making all this incredible money trading on all this inside information. He goes on to say, we have hundreds of rules, many of which are uncoordinated and inconsistent with each other. How about being one of them? Yeah. Diamond said in his 38-page letter, his longest since becoming CEO. Complexity and confusion should have been alleviated, not compounded. So what does he do? On his London trading desk, it turns out that the whale of London, who's got a $100 billion trading stick of positions, has been adding complexity and ever more complexity and taking directional trades and positional trades, the very thing that he said he was absolutely not doing. So he's absolutely lying through his teeth, and he goes on to basically condemn folks in the retail environment, saying that he doesn't think accepting accounts for $100,000 or less is going to be profitable for J.P. Morgan anymore, so they can go bank somewhere else, and basically has utter contempt for anybody who's not part of the new J.P. Morgan card that they're issuing only to those with a liquid balance of $25 million. So that's their business model. Now today he was caught absolutely red-handed with his hand in the cookie jar. He's totally incompetent. I think that the fuse has been lit. I think that continuing to buy silver will continue to put pressure on the company, on the balance sheet, on this whole industry. And I think that we are going to prevail against these guys. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. How about that? What do you think? Yeah? Yeah, okay. All right, we're going to do some Q&A if that's okay. I'll take a little Q&A. I'm going to take a little Q&A. That's what I'm going to do. Yes?
Thanks. Now, Jim Willie? Are you familiar?
Jim Willie.
Are you familiar with Jim Willie?
Yes, he just sent me an email this morning about J.P. Morgan. He thinks that the loss is not $2 billion, but $18 billion.
Right. I listened to the whole video. It was about 40 minutes. And he said that the Eastern banks are driving the price down by buying up so much of the gold, forcing the banks to give up their gold.
Right. Well, let me jump in there, because the gold and silver trade. This is what's interesting about the gold and silver trade, because for these banks, they of course are always looking to make a few bucks, easy bucks here and there, and they know that there are people like me and others who are saying buy silver, buy gold. There's a natural bias to buy silver and gold. Central banks are net buyers of gold after being net sellers for years. The trend is positive. The case for it is overwhelmingly positive. But they tend to come in there and scalp the price. So every time you see the silver price move up, there they are waiting to scalp it for $5 or $6. They have overwhelming, access to capital to scalp these markets, and they're picking off local people, retail people, and that is definitely a factor. But we definitely, need to continue to accumulate physical, take it off the market. B, understand that by doing so, we're ultimately destabilizing the banks and going to, hopefully crush them to the point where many new banks will appear that are going to be competitive and want to compete and not rely entirely on this tapeworm model. And so it's a tough slog, but that's just the dynamic of it that we have to endure. I mean, I don't like being scalped.
My question is this, Max. He was saying that we should expect prices to go way, way down on gold, and of course silver will follow. And he said maybe 1,300, 1,000, because the central banks keep having to give up their gold to the Asians, and they keep buying.
Right. Well, here's the thing about gold and silver is that you don't have, counterparty risk. It's
I know
liquid.
why
It's
they're
there.
buying it. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
does everybody know that it's going to go that low? Because people are going to panic when if gold goes to 1,000,
Right. Well,
or silver goes to 15 or
Stacey
something.
and I,
People are going
when
to
we
panic.
first started our show on Resonance 104.4 in London, silver was $4, gold was $400. And we've been talking about it ever since. And ever since that time, there have been pullbacks. And ever since that time, the situation's gotten much worse. And the banking crisis has gotten ever deeper and more complicated and more threatening. So the idea of owning gold and silver, I say this to people, only put money in paper that you're willing to lose. If JP Morgan can go into your account and steal your money as it did with MF Global, I don't feel safe having that kind of situation going on. And that's my thought. But of course, do your own work, do your own research. I am very enthusiastic, but I'm not, omniscient. I'm not, Yes, sir, in the back.
A personal question. After all this exposure that we get, I'm kind of curious about your own personal security. I mean, do you get threats from it? I mean, they're very powerful people. So, I mean, what are you facing these days as you speak out more and more about this?
At the moment, we don't. We got one episode. We made a film for Al Jazeera. I don't know if you've ever seen our Al Jazeera films. We did a few years ago. We did one for the Iceland film before it blew up. We did one on the CIA and what they were going on in Milan and other places. And there was a lot of activity around that particular film. We got a lot of interest from folks in Langley and whatnot. But that kind of. But my feeling is that my demographic are basically spies, and so I'm monetizing their surveillance. And they're checking me out, but I'm selling ads against them checking me out. And so you check me out all day long. I'm just going to sell another ad. Buy more gold. So yeah, how you doing today? Yeah. It's a Berkey water purification system. That's some good stuff. FBI? Yeah. Here's the.
Max, what's going on with high frequency trading?
I didn't
What
quite
about
hear
High
that.
frequency trading. Oh, I didn't say high.
No. The question is high frequency trading. Are you familiar with this high frequency trading? This is really a deplorable, despicable scam perpetrated by the quants of Wall Street. So basically, after working on the industry myself, I'm very familiar with something called front running. So if you know that there's a trade coming to the exchange, like there's a big order to buy 10,000 shares, you can buy, a few shares ahead of this big order, and then when the price moves up or down, you're already there. You've parked your trade in a very strategic spot, and then you get out real quick, and you front run. You made a quick scam. You're scalping the market. So high frequency trading, in most of the time, involves the actual physical domicile. Putting the server next to the exchange and dumping what they call quote stuffing thousands of trades, hundreds of thousands of trades, in an attempt to jar prices ahead of actual legitimate trading to scalp the market. By some estimates, Goldman Sachs made something like $100 million a day doing nothing but this type of scalping. I mean, if Lloyd Blankfein went to his neighbor with a hose and stuck it in the gas tank of the car and siphoned off 2 gallons of gas, he couldn't claim as his defense, I was making a market my neighbor's gas. Could he? And yet that's what he says. He'll go on Charlie Rose and say, well, I'm a market maker and we're adding liquidity to the system. Yeah, well, you stole the fucking money, you larcenistic bastard. How about that? How about going to jail and getting, as Matt Taibbi has said, it's an unpleasant situation. So that's high frequency trading, but it's an arms race, but they have to do it faster and faster and faster. And I was very excited a few weeks ago when it came out that the scientists believed that the neutrino was going to travel faster than the speed of light. Because then I can imagine blank fight going backwards in time and fucking me in the past. Imagine that, neutrino trading. I fucked you in the 70s. While you were listening to disco. Any disco fans? Yeah, I kind of missed the whole 60s thing, you know. I didn't really come of age until Madonna. She could rock. All right. Yes, sir.
Question. First of all, I love your show.
What did you say? You love my suit. You were looking at my
Your
suit.
suit's pretty cool, too.
I love your
Pretty cool,
suit.
too.
Okay. Well, it's just for you.
Just
You know.
curious. Does RT or Press TV put any constraints on you on what you can say against Russia or Iran?
Well, this is an interesting question. That's a fascinating question. Yeah, we get that question often.
I've never heard it.
But first of all, it's an interesting question. First of all, not too many people are aware that actually the show was produced and it's co-produced with Associated Press. So the Associated Press is who is essentially selling the show on to other broadcasters.
What other question?
So we don't interact directly with the network. They interact with our executives at the Associated Press. Okay, number one. Number two, we cover the banking scandals that are global, and during the time when it's affected banks in Russia, or banks that's the Sleaze Bank. I'm not familiar with that bank. It's a big bank that does off-market volume maximization. The Iranian bank, we'll cover those stories. Just, we'll cover the story because it's part of the global banking system. But my feeling is that we are anti-propaganda, and the propaganda comes from CNBC. The propaganda comes from mainstream media in the U.S., which, I listened to NPR a couple of days ago talking about this J.P. Morgan story, and they were just addressing it as a non-event, that it's a technical situation, there's no criminality, and that's supposed to be some kind of, opposition media or left-wing media. There's no left-wing media in this country. There's the far right, there's the near right. There's not even a center media. I mean, Amy Goodman in Democracy Now! Is in the center, But who's on the left? Nobody. I mean, I'd love to be the shock jock left of America's radio talk show world, but they won't have me because I'm too goddamn handsome. And they don't want to hear any other story. Because, if you attack banks in America, it's like going down to the south of France and attacking the cheese industry. It's the religion here. It's like going to the Vatican and the Pope is an asshole. And you get out of Wall Street and you say, Jamie Dimon's a fucking butt-fucking motherfucking scumbag, and I'm going to get upset about that shit. I don't know why. That's what his wife told me.